right. From ups and downs, we're not alone. This is our space where we've grown. Real talk, no filter, just the...
Grief is weird. It's messy, unpredictable, and somehow even in the saddest moments, it can make you laugh at the absolute worst times. This week, we're re-releasing some of our most personal and vulnerable episodes in honor of our podcast 2-year anniversary and the 3-year anniversary of losing our dad. We don't do anything normal around here, so instead of a typical celebration, we're revisiting our ADHD-fueled grief journey. If you've ever lost someone close, especially a parent who is part of your life every day, you'll get it. This is not a step-by-step guide to healing. It's an honest, sometimes chaotic, and totally unfiltered look at how grief actually feels. So let's get into it. So welcome to the re-release of episode 1, Navigating Life After Losing a Loved One. Losing a parent is one of those things that changes you in ways you never expect. In this episode, we open up about what life has been like since losing our dad and how grief hits differently when you have ADHD, from forgetting you're grieving to the weird ways emotions sneak up on you. We're sharing it all. And if you've ever struggled with loss, we see you. So let's talk about it.
Welcome to Burnt Out Perfectionist. My name is Sara.
And my name is Eve.
And today, well, we're going to offer a trigger warning, even though we're not trigger warning types of folks. But if you are listening and you have dealt with grief, loss of a parent, loss of relatives within the last bit, especially within the panorama, etc., then you may not want to fucking listen, just to let you know. But if you choose, you've chosen your own fate.
But on that note,
if you want ASMR of phlegmy snottiness, you may have some moving forward.
yeah, it'll probably most likely be Sara over than me. I'm not.
It could be.
I'm
we
not
can explain
super
why. Like, how do you deal with grief?
Oh, okay. So as people know, I was like,
She's like, where the fuck is she going with this?
So ever since I was little, I'm the weird one.
You're not weird.
Well,
State.
I found out now that it's ADHD grief. So when somebody dies in our family, which happens quite frequently,
As of late, yes.
I have like a 5-minute cry and then I just kind of move on. But then randomly throughout my life, like anytime, it's not like even certain dates or anything, my brain's like, hey, Eve, remember? Your dad's dead. And then I get a little sad. And then I'm fine. And I move on. Versus, Sara, how do you grieve?
Usually I'm like stunned. Like I'll be like in shock. Like, what the fuck? This isn't happening in real life. Unless you kind of see like that slow decline of the person and their personal health. Even if you see it, but it kind of like comes out of nowhere. So usually I'm like kind of stunned, shocked. I'll cry continuously for probably like a day and a half, 2 days. And then I'm kind of like dried out. I don't know a better way to say that. It almost like dries out, or I move to the other stage of grief where I'm like, I'm always at the joking stage. I'm always at that. If you feel awkward or whatever because of like dark jokes or people making funny jokes about that, don't watch Matt Rife. And maybe don't continue to listen because we'll continue to do that. That's just kind of like our way of dealing with things. We understand that everybody else deals with stuff differently. And then I'm kind of like, it sounds really bad, but I'm kind of like over it probably in less than a week. And then I'll have those like moments.
I'd give you 2 weeks.
It depends.
Depending on the level of relationship
Yeah.
with the person or like pet that dies.
Oh, 100%. There's like, it kind of depends on, like you said, like the level of, I don't know, engagement that you have with that person or how much they are in your life. And then I'll just have like moments where sometimes it's just like random, like it doesn't make sense. And there's other times where like it makes sense. Like I would like to state, Disney has always had the reputation for having dead moms.
Oh my God.
And when our dad died, they decided, let's flip the script, and every fucking movie is going to have a dead dad in it, which is always like a little bit, let's call it triggering. But you're kind of like, oh, okay, but sometimes they come out of fucking nowhere.
Like, it's not even in the beginning of, like, the trailers of the movies. It's like, this movie's about this most beautiful land. And then it's like, you start it and it's like, you know, my dad died 3 years ago. And you're like, what?
Or like, yeah, because I think the last one I watched where they had like the mom, like slowly you kind of watch her like health decline from like cancer was that like kids movie where they like build an amusement park and she has all these like fun memories of shit, and I cannot remember the name of the movie right now.
Wonderland?
Yes. Oh my God.
You watched that?
Oh yeah, I totally did. Oh, Charlie wanted to watch it really bad, and I was like, okay, whatever. I mean, like, feelings are feelings. I'd rather her not be a psychopath. So there's that. But yeah, I don't know who decided to flip that script, who was mad at their dad instead of being mad at their mom. I mean, our mom was quite happy because I remember we'd go to movies and she'd be like, oh, of course she has a dead mom. Of course. Because I'm the one who was just standing in line while you guys were watching the trailers in the beginning of the movie to get you fucking popcorn. But of course, the mom is dead.
Yeah, so like a bit of a background on our, like, obviously Sarah and I are sisters. Is we've had a lot of death from like a young age.
Yeah.
Like all of our grandparents were gone by the age I was like 11.
Yeah.
So Sarah would have been at 14 years, like 25.
Yeah. I was gonna say 25 and under. No,
I was like 25. I never had grandfathers. They all died before I was born.
Yeah.
I had short-lived relationships with my grandmas.
Well, you just missed one grandpa by like 6 months.
Oh my God, that fucker couldn't stay.
No.
And then, from then on, we've had an aunt and uncle die. Our dad died, so I think we'll probably dive in more about death.
Oh, and then like the animals in which we've lost. Which, like, if you've ever had a personal family pet that you've had for years that everybody's connected with, not just like it's one person's animal, then it hits the same sometimes, or almost even worse, because like your entire routine's ruined.
Which is kind of
funny. Looping somebody else.
Because if you listen to the prior podcast, I talked about how I found out that my dog was dead through a strawberry sundae.
Oh, that's very true. But the strawberry sundae is like always a thing, right?
It'll always be a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I feel like we'll give a little bit of a timeline of during the panorama.
Yeah. Oh no. We should go all the way back to the beginning.
All the way back to the beginning.
Yeah.
What's all the way back to the beginning for you?
Well, I'm old. So all the way back to the beginning, just to like preface. So our dad always had random events and stuff like that happen to him.
I was like,
and so like our parents were married, and before their 1-year anniversary, so he got into a car accident. He got ran over by a cement truck and a Hyundai Pony. So our dad was roughly 6'5" before this all happened. 6'5", very fit. There was because the accident was so large. Now I could get this wrong, but from my understanding, there was like 2 or 3 vehicles that were involved, and he was kind of in the middle, and they didn't even know that the car was there. I remember that aspect of them telling me about it. And all I heard is, "Oh fuck," and they went, "Oh my God, there's somebody in there, and they're alive."
It also the preface that the cement truck was full.
And up until the day he died, anytime he saw one, he's like, "And we're changing lanes now. That's a hard fucking pass. I've been there before and I survived it, and that probably won't happen again." Subsequent accidents would happen after, or due to just like people making poor choices, which then in turn ended with our dad being the one who got hurt.
You know that safety binder that's all at workspaces?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably created because of dad.
And that was the unfortunate thing. Like, most kids would be excited when their dad was coming home early from work. Our dad came home early from work, and our mom's immediate reaction was, "Oh my fucking God, what happened?" And sometimes it'd be like, "Oh yeah, buddy wasn't paying attention and put this through, and this piece of metal shot off, bounced all the way around the fucking warehouse, and it in my eye." That, or like the one fence board with the one existing nail that wasn't pulled all the way out, that is laying on the ground. He found it. The sewing needles that magically are like fucking bobby pins and just show up everywhere. in the foot.
Oh my God, he got gangrene. So his appendix burst when
Oh.
he was like 13. This man got gangrene.
So there's like so many different things that constantly led up to his life being interesting. So if anybody is old enough to remember Home Improvement and there was all of the stuff that randomly would happen to Tim, those things would happen to our dad. So one day I was getting ready for work and I was going to be late as fuck. And our dad was like, okay, like I'll just drive you. I'm like, no, it's fine. Like whatever. I'll just like walk or ride my bike. Eve came running out, was like, I want to go with you guys, please.
I was like 10. I'd like to preface that.
Our dad and I looked at each other. I'm like, I don't know. It feels weird. He's like, no. Like stay home.
Yeah.
I was like, fine. It goes inside.
I'd like to preface, I literally went everywhere with Dad all the time.
Oh, all the time. And you are always down for an adventure.
Oh, yeah.
So we were in a 79 Ford pickup truck, which is made out of metal. Its name was Homer. And he was driving me to work. And we were driving up to a light. The light had been a red light before, and then the light had changed to green. We proceeded to go through, and someone in the left-hand turn lane decided that they were behind all the other people who had already turned left previously, and they were worried that they were going to lose them, and they decided to rip through. So I remember looking at our dad being like, hey, I'm like, oh my God, they're turning left. And he went, what? So he was also a class 1 truck driver. He's a very good driver, never had anything against him on his driving record. And he goes, okay, and did the most dad thing in the entire world and turned the vehicle to the right. So that way the higher impact was on his side, but also he wanted to ensure that we didn't land on top of the vehicle because he saw kids in the back seat. So basically his side got punched in. We were on an angle. My head got smashed into the little triangle thing that holds your seatbelt and then into the window. He went forward into the steering wheel, up into the ceiling, drove his head in, and then my cell phone came out of the purse, nailed him in the face, and broke his orbital bone. Orbital? I don't know, this one right here. Cheekbone?
I just say cheekbone.
Okay. So he was knocked unconscious. I had a concussion, stuff like this. And all I remember is like picking up my phone, which I was like, why is it on the ground? And it was smashed to fuck. And apparently I called 911. There's nothing more disturbing than hearing a 911 call when you had no idea that you made it and they play it at your fucking shit for your car accident. And then I looked out and there was a cop driving down the road. He came out. He took me out of the vehicle, put me in the back of his cop car because the angle of which it was going, the smoke was coming in from the radiator. The steam, I guess, was coming in from the radiator.
Well, also the antifreeze.
Yeah.
Blew too. Not the antifreeze. It was like spraying it.
Yeah. So he moved me and then he was like, I don't think I can move your dad, but is he allowed? Well, the first thing I said before I got out of the vehicle is, you better not be dead. And he said, no. And I was like, okay, good. And anyways, it went in there. We had subsequent injuries, all that other stuff. Obviously, like our dad was worse off than myself. Yeah, so we had all that stuff happen. And there was a lot of things that happened after that. So the seatbelt went into his stomach, so he had a hernia. He had to have hernia surgery. Things happened. He came out of that surgery with type 2 diabetes.
So if anybody doesn't know what a hernia operation is, it's basically, for this specific situation, his seatbelt, the lower strap pressed so hard into his stomach that his intestines attempted to come out of his belly button. So it has this kind of like balloon shape. So when you have a hernia operation, you're trying to like get that back in. But he didn't know right after surgery that he had
he did.
diabetes. So he came home and he was drinking like ridiculous amounts of water and peeing, and he was like losing a bunch of weight.
He lost like 50 pounds in like a month. Like it was terrifying.
And like at that time too, when they had to do all the checkups for the car accident. So the doctor was like, we need to get you checked. And then about a year and a half later, he was like, my heart's not feeling the best. It was super weird.
He was like really tired and they kept blaming it on the type 2 diabetes.
And so then he went in and he found out that he got a heart test and that his heart was functioning at 34%.
Yes.
So specifically his aortic valve, which is like the big one that like
the one that like pumps all the blood into your heart.
Pumps most of the blood out, was shredded. So what the like conclusion is that when the car accident happened, when his hernia happened in the pressing in the intestine, it backflowed blood so hard that it shredded his heart valve. So he had an aortic valve replacement, specifically a bovine valve.
So you like to say that he was full of bullshit because his
Yeah.
eyes were brown, and now he was actually part cow.
Oh my God, it was so funny.
All of the jokes that were made.
Specific thing too is that back at that time there was only like bovine and musculoskeletal, and musculoskeletal valves made like a clicking noise, and you're like, I don't want to fucking hear that shit. So at that time aortic valve replacements only last between like they're at most 8 years.
They said 8 to 10 years at the most.
He was like doing okay. He started working again, and then it would have been like the lovely panorama.
Oh yeah,
We love the panorama. And our whole family got COVID in like the end of 2020.
we had COVID when people were still being assholes about you getting COVID. Like, what did you do? Did you not wash your produce? Did you not use hand sanitizer? Did you not change your clothes when you came home from the grocery store?
It was like peak fear time.
Yes.
And so like was sick in like October and November.
He had like what he thought was a sinus infection.
Yeah.
Then he was like, I think I have pneumonia,
And then it was
bronchitis. And then it was bronchitis. And then we got COVID.
And then he was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go to the doctor. So
which was a whole ordeal at that time.
oh my God. It was back when it was like, do you really need to go to the doctor or can we just like FaceTime?
Yeah.
So he went in, found out that he needs to get another aortic valve replacement, which like not gonna like kind of set a break. It was like almost 10 years later. So it would have been January. Our dog died.
Her name was Buffy.
She was a midi dachshund, technically.
And she was the adorable land otter of all of our lives. She brought so much joy and at the end so much peace. She was very close to our dad, which I know you're envisioning it now. We explained that he was like 6'4", 6'5". He's like a bigger dude, built like a football player, carrying around
A tiny dog.
a tiny dog who he loves so much. And that hit him really fucking hard. Obviously, it hit all of us hard, but
Well,
she was like,
She was dying for like 6 months.
yeah. She also got diabetes, so they matched. That was funsies. That was a bonding moment for them. And so that like obviously was like a downfall for him. So then he went on the mission.
So when Casey died,
Yeah.
who was our dog prior, we still had Buffy.
Yes.
So we still heard the nails. So when Buffy died, it was like dead ass quiet. And I was like, Dad, I need a dog.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have money in my bank account. I will go buy a dog.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. And then the most adorable little puppy appeared.
On Kijiji.
A Kijiji. So then we made our scoop down. Our dad won like the Set for Life. So technically she was my Set for Life dog.
Yes.
Which was the exact amount that we needed to get her. He came back. It would have been like end of February. He like was starting to get this weird flu again.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, that's super weird. First week of March, he was getting pretty bad. He went to the doctors, got an inhaler and stuff like that. His breathing was really shitty. And then it was the Tuesday, and Sarah came to me and she was like I was at school. It was still in
It was a
school online.
But it was like you had a lab or whatever and you went to physical.
So she sat me down and was like, hey, he's not listening to me. He's not listening to Mom.
Yeah.
He needs to go to the hospital, and like he's not listening. And I'm like, oh God damn it.
I was
Which,
like,
like,
I need you. I need an extra person.
Which Sarah's child was like,
So she was
so, like,
4.
our like biggest fear was that like if something did happen that like she would find him or something.
Because she would be the one who'd go in and be like, Papa, why aren't you breathing? Our brother has autism.
Another level.
That's just another level of like understanding, and like there were so many things and we're just like, okay, like he needs help. We wanted him to get better.
Yeah.
But we knew that if something was going to happen, even though he would probably want to sit in his fucking green leather recliner. But
well, like it got just so bad to the point he couldn't even walk down the stairs. And so I went in and I basically had to scream at him and tell him to get his fucking ass in the car. And so Mom came home I handed her the like bag of medications. Sarah was throwing shit in a bag.
Yeah.
I'm screaming at my father.
Yeah. Because he didn't listen to me when I...
No, so like there's a specific like role that I have in this family. It's known as the initiator.
Yeah.
So like anytime that somebody needs to do something or like something's the issue, like I usually initiate it and then people take over. It's fine. It's not mean that people can't do stuff without me, but that's what kind of happened. So mom comes home, takes him to the hospital. The emergency room nurse looks at her and goes, "Hey, just a heads up, it's not doing well. Like he's going up to the cardiac ICU." So he was like not doing well for the first couple of days. Then he was starting to like stabilize. And then on the Friday they said, "Okay, plan is Monday."
Yeah.
They just needed a couple because like obviously before surgery you have to, unless it's an emergency, you have to be like stable enough.
100%.
So it would have been, so Friday night, mom calls me and goes, "Hey, like, I'm just going to stay a bit longer. Like, dad really wants me to hang out." And I was like,
And he was super excited and super happy.
so Saturday at like 2:00 in the morning, he
Yes.
got up, to go to the bathroom, which like in the cardiac ICU, everybody has their own bathroom.
Before you state what's about to happen, would you like to state the statistics that we both looked into prior to said event that happened?
At this time too, it just so happened that I was learning about cardiac surgery while I was in school.
Yeah.
I knew it was pretty much an 80% life or death.
Yes.
When he got the paperwork and everything that he was going to have surgery, Saturday he got up to go to the bathroom. Also a good note too is if you are having heart issues and you poop and you strain too much, it's literally a sign after cardiac surgery is that you can have a heart attack. So he went to the bathroom, comes back over to like the bed, sits down, goes like, "I don't feel well." Went into cardiac arrest, fancy time of like heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
They get him back in. They bring him back.
Yeah.
And then he went into another cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
They did everything they could and he died.
Because he's stubborn. He's like, no, I made my choice. You fuckers.
Bitches. And which also a good note too is when he had his prior heart surgery too, it took a really long time to get him off of bypass.
Yeah.
Which is like the machine that keeps your heart working while the surgeons are working on it. He passes. They call at like 3:24 in the morning. They're like, which like mom had the worst ringtone on the face of the planet. It was the like old school phone that was really loud. So she gets the call. Our neighbor picked her up and drove her to the hospital. And then one of our aunts and uncles drove there too. Again, this was during COVID. So none of us could visit our dad in the hospital except for our mom because it was like the token person.
Yeah.
They left and everything. And at that point, our mom didn't know.
Yeah, she didn't know because they're not going to be like, "Hi, so your husband died. Can you come here, please?"
No, well, like they called while he was coding.
Yeah.
And so at 3:30 in the morning, I was alone.
Yes.
Our dog didn't even wake up.
Well, and our brother sleeps through the world.
Oh my God. So I was sitting there and I'm like waiting and I call Sarah and I'm kind of giving her the rundown and stuff. And she was like, "Okay." And she's like, "We're trying to sort out like rides and stuff like that for her to come over."
Yeah.
And she goes, "That's weird. I haven't heard from mom."
I'm like, "It's super weird. I don't have a text or anything from mom, and she wouldn't expect you to contact." So I ended up calling the same neighbor who drove our mother to the hospital.
Real party night for him.
Yeah. So my husband was really tired. Plus, we would have had to wake up our daughter. And I called our neighbor. He's like, "I'll come get you." I was talking to Eve on the phone, and I said, "Fuck this. I'm just going to call her."
At that time, too, I was like, "No, Sarah, I know he's gone."
Yeah, you were like, "I know." And I was like, "I know, but I need that definitive." So I guess at the moment, it was like 5 seconds before I was calling, our mom looked at our aunt, who was our dad's older sister, and goes, "How the fuck am I supposed to tell my kids? Who am I going to tell first?" And then the phone rang and she goes, "Oh, she knows."
Well, because it was between, like, we were both on the phone and I was like, "Okay, sure." Because, like, at that time I was like, "Oh, fuck."
You're like, "I feel like..."
No, I was like, I fully in my heart knew he was gone.
Yes.
And I was like, "Well, fuck." And I knew, I accepted it. I processed it. And I was like, I'm usually the person who delivers the shitty news.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Sarah can hear it.
I know, but I was like, okay, I need a definitive. I need to hear somebody who is there, whoever picked up the fucking phone, or the nurse who's standing there, whatever, to tell me. So she told me, and I had a complete mental breakdown, which, fun fact, I have a security camera.
Yeah.
So
this was before our neighbor had picked her up.
Yeah, before a neighbor had picked us up, and our mom was like, can you not say anything? I want to make sure I get a hold of, like, your other siblings. I'm like, okay, like, whatever. And then she was like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm like, that's fine. Like, I've got this. She's like, okay. So I had, like, a complete fucking breakdown. My husband deleted it all off the security footage because I almost wanted, I know this may sound super weird. I almost wanted to watch it back so that way I could absorb that it actually happened. My husband hears me. I'm not a quiet individual, like wailing out.
She kind of has, like,
I don't know wail.
how to describe it. It's more like,
It's a little
it starts quiet. It starts quiet, and then it's just like, ah.
Like, it's one of two ways. I'm either silent. This is the same when I'm laughing, by the way. I'm either completely fucking silent, making all the faces like a silent movie, or I'm so fucking loud, you're like, shut the fuck up. Or if I'm crying, you're like, dear God, are you in pain? He opens up the door and he's looking at me, and I was like, he's gone. And he's like, oh my God, did your brother get out the door? Like, what happened? So he immediately thought that something was wrong. And I was like, no, my dad's dead. And he looks at me and he goes, no, he's fucking not. And I went, yeah, he is. So I'm just going to preface this for about 2 seconds. My husband's dad passed away suddenly of heart issues in early 2016. So he's like, oh my fucking God. And he's also known my dad since he was like 13 years old. So there's that aspect. And he was like in complete shock. Like, he didn't know what to do. He handles things completely differently. I feel like it's very much like he lives in the shock zone for a significant amount of time because he's like trying to process, like, oh my God, what do I do? I've been through this. What did I want? But she wants different things. Like, you could see the things moving in his head. And I was like, oh my God. And then our neighbor pulled up and our mom had said, don't say anything, right? Like, you want to make sure that you talk to your siblings and stuff like this. I get in the car. Oh my God. So our neighbor was like really good friends with our dad. Like, he's like,
he's been our neighbor for like over like
almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years, yeah.
And he's almost like, he's more like a friend uncle than like a frunkle, than just like a neighbor who came to assist, who was doing like their due diligence and duty. I get in the car. I get in the car and he goes,
2 or 3 minutes. No, because he found out when I called you.
What?
Because I called you.
Oh, no, I'm getting there. Trust.
Okay. I was like, well,
I get in the car and he looks at my face and he goes, it's okay, I got you. We're going to get there. And he's like, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to the hospital or do you want to go to Eve? Because I'm going to preface again, like, our brother was sleeping. And in certain situations, you don't awake or ruin a routine of someone who is on the spectrum because it can cause other reactions.
Yeah.
We do have another sibling as well who we were trying to contact, but unfortunately, she also has the wonderful same sleeping gene as our brother.
Oh my
She's
God,
a very, very solid sleeper.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he's like, okay. And he's like, where do you want to go? And I'm like, I need to go to Eve. And he looks at me and he goes, you don't want to go to the hospital with your mom?
And mind you, you can't really go into the hospital at that time anyway.
I know, but it's like, it was almost like COVID went out the window. You like, you kind of think of different things. And I was like, oh, my aunt and uncle are there with her. I need to go to Eve. And he looks at me and he looks me straight in the face and he goes, fuck. And I went, yeah, fuck is the right word.
Our neighbor doesn't even like, our neighbor doesn't swear that often.
No, he doesn't swear that often. Like,
he's a Jesus man.
He's a Jesus man. But he just looks at me and he goes, fuck. And he stops and he holds his face and he looks down and then he goes, okay, let's do this. Of course, Eve has no patience.
No, because I told her, hey, you call mom. Okay, I'll be here. And you were like, I will call you right after Eve. And then she hangs up.
Oh, yeah.
Bitch made me wait like 25 minutes.
Oh, my God. So we're almost there. I want to say, because there was no traffic and there, even though there's lights and stuff, 7 minutes away. She calls. You fucking ghosted me. Have you heard anything yet? I haven't heard from mom. I haven't heard from you. I'm trying to call the other one. She's not picking up because obviously she's sleeping. No one's giving me any answers. What the fuck is going on?
And can I also preface, this is the only thing I heard on the other side of the foot.
I kept going, I'm not that far away.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way. And you went, just fucking tell me he's gone.
No, but she didn't even say it. She didn't even say it in like a.
No,
He's gone. It was like Sarah bawling her eyes out, going, he's gone.
yeah.
And
it was
I
like,
went,
obviously.
okay. And then I hung up the phone because you were like, I'm almost there. And then I was like, okay. And then I literally just sat on the couch because, again, even the dog didn't even pick up. And I walked over to my dad's closet. I took the jacket that I always used to wear.
Yeah.
And I just walked in and I sat there waiting. And I was like, okay. And then I got a call from Mom. And she was like, hey, honey, like, we're on our way. And I was like, Mom, I know he's dead. It's fine. Can you hurry the fuck up?
And the weird thing was I literally feel like we all showed up at the same time.
You did.
Okay, I was like, was that my brain or not? And all I remember is we all got out and it was like a giant hugging. Yeah, you were.
I walked out with a mug of coffee. I told you.
You're like, I've registered this, I've dealt with it, I've put it in the filing cabinet, and it is away. It's like the honesty, right? So eventually we did get a hold of our other sibling, and she picked up her phone and stuff like that, and then they came over, and it's very different. We all are far apart somewhat in age.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was, I want to say we were just like, it was kind of like the numbness for the first bit, or almost like the shock. Like everybody kept talking about stuff. I immediately was like, okay, so who needs to, this is what I do when people die. I'm like, okay, so do we need to set things up for the crematorium? Because I can't think of in his exact words, his husk.
Yeah.
Being there, because he said your soul and your being is who you are, not just the outer part of you.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want him sitting in a fucking freezer. Like that was something that I just didn't want. I'm like, okay, do I need to contact people? Like,
Did you say sit in a freezer?
well, not a freezer. Like it's like the cooler morgue thing.
God, also, movies make it seem like it's so much quicker than it is.
Eventually, kind of like everybody started finding out. I waited to tell my daughter until she woke up. I wasn't going to wake my kid up just because either way, this sounds super blunt and I'm very sorry, but either way, her papa was dead. So
The other thing is like, it was like, that day was like the longest day ever.
oh my God, it was the longest day of our fucking lives. I don't know how many grief walks we went on, as we like to call them.
Oh, no, it was depressive walks.
Oh,
Because sometimes I would just walk out with a mug of coffee and walk around. So much so that there was like this like adorable old lady like 2 streets down who was like, are you guys okay? Like, I see you guys walk a lot. And I think I said, my dad just died. And then kept walking. And Sarah was like, I'm so sorry. With my delightful ADHD, I forget to eat all the time anyway. So, like, you add a bunch of people coming to the house and stuff.
we were on the we like to call it the Catholic casserole train.
Oh my God. Which I kind of feel like leads to the next thing.
Yeah.
When, like, after this had happened and everybody's reactions to everything,
Yeah.
I even said it to Mom. I was like, those like couple months after Dad died was the most like, there were so many people here, but I've never felt so alone.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, right? So everybody was in their like own headspace. So I'm old. I have a kid. So I'm helping my kid deal with the fact that somebody that she saw every single day was doing this.
Yeah.
I'm helping my husband, who is now re-traumatized because of all the shit that happened, and he did not see it coming. He is, in some aspects, unless it's the news, Captain Positivity.
Yeah.
So he was just like, oh, okay, like he didn't want this. No, but I don't think anybody wants this, but he was never like, he wasn't like cynical, like, well, my dad died, so if your dad has hard things, like it's probably going to happen too.
Yeah.
That's not what he was like at all. And then I had like, my friends who were like super sympathetic, but it was like, I contacted, my best friend, Morgan. I contacted Jen. And then, Morgan then it was kind of like a phone tree. So they kind of like let other people know. And then I had people who I hadn't talked to in over a fucking decade, like want to call me and reach out, which is totally fine.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was just like, there was that kind of thing. So I had like those people, but again, like one of them lives 3.5 hours away. The other one lives an hour and 45 minutes away. They also have kids. So like my expectations, I just need the idea of people being there. I don't actually need people like physically there, but like one of my friends who lives close she was like, okay, I know you're not eating because I know you guys. What does everybody want? Does everybody want food? Like, I'd be happy to bring that because that is how she helps people, and I get that. And so we did that. They came over and saw and everything. So there was like those aspects, but people just kind of like standing by for you, because there's a lot of people who will reach out or comment on a post because, like, unfortunately, well, it's kind of like an obituary now. There's people don't pay for obituaries. You put on fucking social media and everybody finds out. And once it posts, then people who have had a parent lose a parent, they almost feel like obligated to reach out to you, which in a lot of ways is nice, especially if they're like realistic.
Yeah.
Unless they like literally just had it happen and they're kind of like going through their stages still. And you're like, this is not where I'm at right now. We're not lining up, but I appreciate you reaching out. But there would be those like kind of different aspects. But then there's also folks who kind of like make it about themselves. And you're like, you haven't fucking talked to me in years. Why the fuck are you calling me right now? Oh, because I care. And that might sound heartless, but it's like, but do you really? Or do you only care when something like this happens?
Well, and I think I just turned 20. And so,
and we've also talked previously about like how so different your life leaving graduating from high school, going to college and stuff like that is. Like the recap is a majority, like it was kind of ramping up. It was a rumor, the vid. And then everything was kind of like changing.
Then everything shut down.
Then everything shut down.
And then a year later.
Where most people would be seeing other people all the time, would be relating to other people that they say went to high school with or seeing friends, stuff like this all the time. That wasn't a thing when this happened. Nobody was seeing each other. Like you barely saw your fucking family.
No, so unless I had those relationships prior. So I let my professors know, because I had a project where I had to communicate with somebody, and I just wanted to let them know, like, hey, my dad died, and he was like, do we need to reschedule? And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. So I had posted something on social media, and literally the only person that reached out to me was like my one friend from college and my best friend, who was like, oh my God, what the fuck? Yeah. And then my one childhood friend reached out to me like a couple months later. But I just remember sitting there and like all of these people are coming, and like obviously I'm just kind of in my like phase. Like I'm like, meh.
Yeah.
Okay, shit happens, and he died, literally. And then people are like coming all the time, and the number one thing that happens here, everybody's immediate reaction was to ask for Sarah or for my mom.
Yeah.
Every time I like picked up the phone or something like that, and I just remember our mom was like, hey, so-and-so really like just wants to give Sarah a hug, and just kept going. It's like, oh my God, it's such a loss for the family. And all you hear is that everybody gives a fuck about everybody else.
Yeah.
I punched 7-layer dip. That's how pissed off.
Oh no, she didn't just punch it. She annihilated it. I was in the kitchen.
So, and obviously Sarah understands that it wasn't against her.
Oh, fuck.
But
no.
there was just one last time, and I was like, I was fucking done. I was wearing like, I was still wearing the jacket. My entire arm was covered in 7-layer dip. Mm-hmm. I was so pissed off. I took the bag of chips and I walked out, and I stormed, and I didn't come back for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I didn't tell anybody where the fuck I was.
No.
I didn't say anything. And I had walked to my old elementary school, and I was sitting on the swing, and I had my bag of corn chips, and I was scraping 7-layer dip off of my jacket because I was so sick and fucking tired of that bullshit the whole time. And like obviously like our mom was processing everything, and I had already processed it, so that causes like everybody's in different
frustration because everybody deals with grief differently, and that's one thing that you definitely need to understand. No, there's like different people, so obviously it's like shock, husband, father of kids, stuff like this.
Oh yeah, and like obviously I don't resent anybody for it, but I was kind of like,
everybody deals with shit different.
It was just like, wow. And because I'm so young when I lost him,
yeah,
the reaction is just like, nobody knows how to talk to me. Nobody knows how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's so weird. And I was talking to Sarah about this like not too long ago. And I was like, because obviously I was graduating the year that our dad died.
Yeah.
And so what was the number one comment when I was graduating college? Oh, well, your dad would have loved to seen it. And I looked around and I was like, I am so sick and tired of now every single life event that I will ever have, I will have to have the constant reminder that my dad's not here.
Or people were like saying it to you, and I think they were trying to say it in like some weird fucking empathetic way, but it's like, oh, isn't it so sad? Your dad will never be at your wedding. Yeah, thanks. I just lost him. Do you need to remind me of
Oh my God,
the rest of my
He's
future?
never going to meet your children. And it's like that constant thing. And like for me, who's just like processes it and I'm like done with it, I was just kind of like, wow, that's like kind of mean. But if somebody's like easily triggered by that or something,
Yeah.
they're going to be stuck on it.
You know, when you watch an episode and they like hone in on the person and the person's staying still and everybody else is moving like really fast around them.
Yeah.
When I looked at you, that's what I felt like. Not me being the sole person staying still and everything else moving around them. That was you when I looked. That was like the perspective that I saw. Because there would be like people who would like come drop shit off who like didn't even know our dad.
Yeah.
And for people, or they'd be calling people or like all this other stuff. And we'd be sitting there and it would be like,
I even left my ringer on because I was like because our mom was like, no, they're like coming for you too. And I was like, I'm leaving my ringer on. And she was like, well, I haven't heard anything. I'm like, yeah.
exactly.
And like, I just even remember like at his funeral too, I felt the same. I was like, it was very limited because of COVID.
Yeah.
But like, I just remember sitting there and I was like, okay. But it was like, you could just like see the difference. And it was like so apparent to me that it was like, yeah, we know you lost him too.
And then there's also the aspect of like you said, and it's like, oh, well, you're graduating in a couple of months. You know, he'd be so proud of you. Yeah, he told you all the fucking time he was proud of you. You don't need.
Well, even when I like meet new people now, and I said to Mom, I was like, whenever I like marry someone, I'm like, you're gonna have to deal with this for the rest of your life. That my dad died when I was young.
For some weird reason now, it becomes like part of your like personality or like what people focus on.
Okay, well, like that's the other thing is like when I remember when I first started working, which you know was in the same year.
Yeah.
I was working and somebody was like, oh, like they were trying nicely to like get to know me, and obviously it wasn't like the first thing that came to mind. Is
also again still awkward, still with masks, still with all of this PPE all over your body, looking like a fucking minion.
And you're the new girl,
and you're the new girl.
And I was like, oh yeah, like I was with my mom and my younger brother, and then it's like always like, oh, like are your parents divorced? And I'm like, no, and they're like, well, where's your dad? And I'm like, I'm very jokey about the death, like even with like his like celebration of life, as you said.
This is what he was like too.
The first song that I added onto the playlist was Man in the Box by Alice in Chains,
which is A, one of his favorite bands in the entire world,
and B, he was cremated and in a box.
And he literally made jokes about like, at my funeral we should play this song, or at the funeral we should play this song, because that's the kind of person that he was. He's like, you need to always remember like the person that you had. You don't need to like always be like, oh, but they're gonna miss this. Remember the shit that you did with them.
Well, and the number one thing that he was always frustrated by is if somebody takes someone's relationship with them, like, you know, when this sounds really bad, you're friends with somebody but you don't really know them.
Oh, I call it angel flying.
Yeah,
Angelifying.
So basically the person dies, they act like this person is the end all fucking be all.
Yeah.
Right, like they were their best friend, even if you didn't really know them. And it pissed off our dad so often. When I started working and stuff, people are like, oh, you must just not have been close to your dad. I'm like, no. Like, he was one of the closest people I ever, like, he was, I always said, if I ever say that my parents are my best friend, just, like, punch me in the face. But, like, he was one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why aren't you sadder? And I'm like, well, if I'm sadder, if I'm happy, it doesn't change the fact that he died.
Also, if you're sadder, how the fuck are you supposed to function? Like, what do they expect you to do? Just have a mental breakdown every 5 seconds? I would say that people, like, always grieve in some aspect a little bit when a significant person, like, passes or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, if I hear When September Ends, I immediately think of our grandfather. Immediately.
Well, like, and I feel
or Andre Bocelli. Can't fucking listen to him.
I feel like this is a good, like, backdrop for, like, people to know. So, like, we'll probably get into it the next episode of, like, talking about how we have like adjusted from then.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was like only a couple days that we like highlighted,
Yeah.
just so that it's easier to like preface.
So if you're going through it and you're like, well, how did this affect other people? And you want examples. But again, everybody deals with this shit differently. No one deals with it the same way.
Well, yeah. So probably in the next episode, we'll go into how Sarah and I go through life without our dad and like how we kind of adjust from then. But from now on, I think we'll end up here.
And we'll stay as warped and twisted as ever.
Peace.
If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear this. And if you've had an ADHD grief moment where your brain just did not process emotions in the way it was, quote unquote, supposed to, tell us in the comments or DM us on Instagram or send us an email. We'd love to hear your story.
Every Monday we got something new. Life's unpredictable, but we're staying true. Through the ups and downs, we'll be here to guide. Come back next week, we'll be right by your side. Burnt out perfectionist, we've got so much to say. Real, raw, and ready to talk today. We'll be back next Monday with more in store. Catch you then, we're always here for more.